Hi, so I'm doing a quick video to help support a SC forum question, and this video is just going to show how to do deep learning labeling with Nepari and Jupyter notebooks. So the question was on bee segmentation, and it's an interesting question because these bees are really tightly clustered and hard to segment with conventional methods. So we're going to try deep learning. But before we can do deep learning, the first step of deep learning is to get some labels. So I have a little notebook here that a notebook and some related utilities that make, at least for me, make labeling these images a little bit easier. So what I first do is load the image and optionally load a label. I don't have a label yet, so right now the label is blank. Then I create some folders to put my labels, and then I sort of go through a cycle of running 3 cells over and over again to create labels. So the first cell creates a unique label name. So right now I've actually already done some labels, so I don't want to overwrite them. It creates a unique name. Then the second cell loads up Nepari and creates a random patch. Once we're in Nepari, we can use Nepari drawing tools to label our image. So the one tool we're going to want to use is the paintbrush, and we can start drawing bees. So what we do is we paint each bee, and we can increment the label number in between each one. And I think if the bees aren't touching, you don't really have to increment the label number. But if the bees are close together, you want to make sure you increment the number just to make sure you don't sort of join two different bees together. And when you're first starting out, this might take some time because you've got to kind of label every bee. Okay, I actually paused the recording for a bit because you probably didn't want to watch me draw every single bee. But yeah, so I labeled every bee pretty quickly. So, I'm doing this to test some of the utilities that I use and I've written, and also to help out on the forum. But if you're doing it for, your real project, your bee research project, I took I don't know, it took me maybe 3 or 4 minutes to label all these guys, but you might spend, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes really carefully labeling the bees here. So yeah, okay, so we labeled the bees. So what I tend to do is I turn Nepari off. But the cool thing is when you're interacting with Nepari, with Python code, even though I turned it off, the Nepari viewer, the changes that were made to the images in the Nepari viewer still exist. So I can just save the images, and it'll save the changes I made to the label image. So yeah, so to label, I just run these 3 cells over and over again, and then I end up with a set of labels. And at the end of this notebook, you can view them all. So yeah, so these are all the labels that I have. So I didn't totally start from scratch here. I've been helping with this problem for a few days, so I already have some bee labels. And so if you go through them, I think the one at the bottom is the one I just did. Try to see what was the name of the last one we did. It was okay, it was bees number 20. So sorry, I confused myself for a second there because it didn't look right, but because I didn't append zeros to the beginning of my numbers. It didn't quite sort everything right. But anyway, the newest one I did was number 20. This is the one I just drew. These are some of the existing ones. So we have our B labels. And one interesting thing, one thing to note is that some of them are blank, which is actually, we want that. We don't want to have mistakes. We don't want it to find fake B's where there are none. So in the forum question, I think one of the things that is happening is once we, which is really common, once we trained a B finder, but once we tested it on a different image, it started to find fake B's. So the solution to that would be to take this second image that the researcher has and make sure we add some more empty areas with no B's in them. So yeah, so this is the little notebook that creates B labels. Okay, so we've created some labels. So now we want to train a model. So the second notebook here is for training. So what it does is it loads the inputs and ground truths that we created in the first notebook. Then it collects the data. Again, there's a few like subtle little steps you have to do, like normalizing the images because neural networks work better when images are normalized. So I have a few little helpers to like collect the data and put them in the right format. So we load the data. Let's take a look at it to make sure that we have what we expected. So we have inputs and we have labels. Then we divide into training and validation sets. So validation set, just a set that you don't train on, so you can see how well your neural network works on data it hasn't seen. One problem with this example, we only have one B image, right? So we're taking all our patches from the same B images. So our training and validation cycle isn't totally valid, so to say. But in the real project, we'll be getting like more B images in eventually. And that's actually what's happening on the forum question. So kind of the important cell here is where we're creating a Stardist model. So in this example, I'm using a library called Stardist, which is really predicts like shape descriptors. So it's a great library to use for anything that's kind of roundish, or it can be described by a star convex model, because what it does is it predicts object probabilities, and then it predicts like these rays which describe the shape of an object. So when you're creating this Stardist neural network, there's a few design decisions that you have to make. You have to decide on like the number of rays. Then you have to decide on your patch sizes, which in this case was sort of determined by how the patch sizes of the labels I made, and your network depth. So the deeper your network is, kind of like the more spatial region it can see, because it keeps on downsampling, and on the downsampled images, you have like a larger physical like field of view. And again, this little video is to help with a forum question. So, if you want to know more about this, there's all kinds of great videos all around about deep learning and convolutional neural nets. So, but anyway, we want to design a network that can try to learn the patterns in these images, then train it. Now I've already trained this, so I'm not gonna, in the video, I'm not going to go through the whole training cycle. Just let's see what we get in the end. So yeah, so right now I'm applying this network that I already trained, does a pretty good job. Now I'm actually gonna apply it to the entire image. This was just a patch. Now, final step here is I am going to view in Nipari again. And this time I'm viewing the whole thing, not just a patch. So we have Napari up. We're doing a pretty good job here, finding lots of bees. Now, a cool thing here is when we preview this label after our first cycle of training, we can start making corrections right on the previewed image. So, and sometimes keyboard shortcuts become really handy for this. So keyboard shortcut 1 is an eraser. So I can go over here and I can erase this false label. And I think on the forum question, the second time we applied this to an image, there's a bunch of false labels here. So you could make the brush size bigger, go over here. If you had a bunch of false ones over here, just erase them all. So then keyboard shortcut 5 brings us back to pan and zoom mode. So we can look around. Now there's some other ones here which might be fake or might not be. Let's take a look at them. Is there a bee on the edge? We can use the opacity here to, this one looks fake. So 1 brings us back to the eraser. We can get rid of that guy. Then, then we can, 5 brings us back to pan. Then we could start, correcting some of our bees, like this one isn't totally right. So I think keyboard shortcut 4 lets us choose label color. So we click and we change it to the same one, and then 2 allows us to draw again. So we draw in the same color. You have to, when you're redrawing labels, you have to make sure you use the same color because otherwise it's interpreted as 2 different labels. And there we go again. And oh wow, this guy missed a lot, so select it. Okay, so I'm not going to do every single bee here, but you get the idea. You can make these corrections. So I'll turn Napari off, close, and final step here is I'm going to save. And I'm actually going to change the name here. I'm going to call it cycle 4. And yeah, so now I should have this label image called cycle 4. And let me copy this. And go back here, go back to my labeling notebook. So these two kind of work together. So in my labeling notebook, right here, I have label name equals none, but let's change it to cycle 4. Let's see, make sure it's TIFF, make sure we comment this out. And there we go. Oh, whoops, I forgot to erase one here. But anyway, this brings up my pre-existing labels now. Now remember, I did this the first time. I was using a blank image. I didn't have labels, so I had to draw a lot. But now, watch what happens. Get a new unique label name, and let's go to Napari. See, I have the existing ones, and now I can correct them. So the corrections that I made on the big image, they're still there, but I didn't correct everything on that big image. It's a little easier to do it on smaller patches. So I can, so I can do the same thing. I can start correcting this patch, fixing these guys. And yeah, so I can get this, yep, this guy. I didn't correct the whole thing. Again, real project, you'd take more care to correct everything, but I saved that guy. Final thing I want to do here is, you notice there's a little guy here that looks like potentially an incorrect one. So we can change okay, yeah, so I paused it again because what I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out, I noticed there's a little fake one in the corner, so I wanted to figure out where that was. 1650, 740. So I start my Napari again, and you can see we have a fake one. Whoops, I want to go to eraser, and we can erase it. And I think we're going to be out of time. But anyway, that's the quick tutorial on how to do labeling and relabeling.